Let's dive into this history. 7 days to dawn. Smoke clung to the morning like a grieving widow, curling around the broken stones and splintered gates of the once mighty Shiraishi fortress. The sea howled nearby, not in rage, but in mourning, sending gusts of wind across the blood-soaked earth. The scent of salt mixed with ash and the copper tang of spilled life. The sky was gray, as if heaven itself refused to witness the aftermath. Beneath the scorched remains of a collapsed watchtower, something stirred. A hand, trembling but alive, pushed free from the debris. Then another. Slowly, painfully, a figure emerged, coated in soot, one side of his face crusted with dried blood. His armor was cracked, his left arm useless. And yet he stood. Haruto. The last son of the Okabe clan. Once a promising samurai, now just another ghost among many. He looked around in silence, and silence answered. No birds. No groans. Only the distant roar of waves and the hiss of dying fires. His knees buckled as he limped forward, every step igniting fire in his ribs. The courtyard, once a place of discipline and ritual, was a grave. Smashed helmets. Scattered banners. Faces he had trained with, drunk with, bled with, now pale and still. Then movement. A cough, faint as a breeze. Haruto turned sharply. Near the edge of a collapsed barracks wall, someone still lived. He stumbled toward it, and fell to his knees beside the figure. Commander Tsunemori. The old warrior's chest rose shallowly, his eyes unfocused, lips flecked with foam and blood. His right hand gripped the hilt of his sword, as though death had to fight for every inch. Commander! Haruto whispered, his voice hoarse. Tsunemori blinked slowly, then locked eyes with him. Haruto, you live! I don't know why. Haruto choked, clutching his side. Everyone! The commander grunted, pain twisting his face. No time. Listen. They came, early. Not pirates. Trained. Coordinated. Treachery, within. He coughed, blood spraying his chin. They sail now, to Tenryu. You must warn them. 7 days, maybe less. Haruto's heart pounded. Tenryu, the last wall between the invaders and the inner provinces. His home. His sister. But I'm your samurai. Tsunemori cut him off, his voice suddenly sharp. You live, so you go. Carry the banner. The war isn't over, not yet. His hand reached out and grabbed the torn remains of their unit's flag, tangled beneath a fallen spear. He pushed it weakly toward Haruto, who took it with shaking hands. The fabric was scorched, torn, but the symbol of the rising falcon still shone through the soot. With a final breath, Tsunemori exhaled. His eyes stared beyond the clouds. Haruto bowed low, forehead touching the blood-stained earth. Your orders are mine. He rose, slowly, as though the weight of the flag was heavier than any blade. He tore the sleeve from his kimono, wrapped it around his wounded side, and tied the flag to his sword's scabbard. As he turned to leave, something caught his eye, glinting beneath the body. He knelt and pulled it free, a feather. Long black. Unfamiliar. Its edges shimmered with oil. Not from any Japanese helm or cloak. Foreign. Haruto narrowed his eyes. This wasn't just a raid. It was a message, and a deception. Someone wanted them to think it was pirates. But this was planned. Precise. Inside knowledge. The thought chilled him more than the sea breeze. Far off, on the horizon, black sails dotted the mist, fading into the distance. The enemy was already on the move. He turned to the east, where a narrow mountain trail disappeared into the dense forest. That would be the fastest way to Tenryu, but also the most treacherous. Bandits. Old traps. Spirits if the stories were true. The pain in his ribs was growing, and the edges of his vision pulsed red. He took one step. Then another. The forest swallowed him. As the green canopy closed above, shadows danced along the path. Each footfall echoed against his bones. His mind buzzed with memories, fever, and the dull roar of grief. Suddenly a sound. Not wind. Not animal. Whispers. Faint. Slipping between the trees like ghosts. Haruto blinked. His hand went to his sword, but he stumbled. His breath came ragged. Blood soaked the makeshift bandage. Behind him, fire. Ahead, only darkness. And still, he moved forward. The forest grew thicker. The world narrowed. And from its depths, something watched. The forest took him in like a breath held too long. Thick trunks rose like pillars in a forgotten temple, moss covering their bases like offerings to time. The light dimmed with each step, the canopy above strangling the sun. No wind. No birdsong. Only the quiet shuffle of Haruto's feet against damp earth. Each step hurt. His right leg throbbed, swollen and raw beneath the wrappings. But worse was the ache in his chest, not from cracked ribs, but from the weight pressing inward. The weight of guilt. Why me? That thought, like a whisper, repeated again and again. Why did I survive when they... He stumbled and caught himself on a low branch, gasping. His eyes flicked up, and froze. Between the trees, a shape. A face. Pale. Familiar. Renji? He whispered, throat dry. But the figure did not move. Did not speak. Then it was gone. No sound. No trace. Only trees. His breath caught. Hallucination. Fever. Or their souls linger. Watching. His heart raced. He kept walking, legs trembling under the weight of memory. The deeper he went, the more the silence pressed in. The trees closed tighter, twisted as if grown in pain. Shapes danced in the corners of his eyes, shadows forming into figures and melting before he could focus. Whispers passed on the edge of hearing. Laughter. Screams. The clash of steel. A soft voice calling his name, again and again. He stopped suddenly, panting, and dropped to his knees. His hands dug into the soil, grounding himself. From behind his eyelids, images flashed. The moment the gates fell, fire cascading down the battlements, his commander's bloodied hand, and eyes. So many eyes. Staring at him from the darkness. A low murmur echoed in his skull, his own voice, younger. I'll never run. He laughed bitterly. That night he didn't sleep. He couldn't. Curled beneath a twisted tree, his sword resting across his lap, Haruto stared into the dark. The moon filtered in only barely, silver strands slicing through mist. Every rustle in the underbrush tightened his grip. Every snapping twig turned his head. His mind drifted, then snapped back. The forest played tricks, but some part of him feared they weren't tricks at all. That the spirits of his fallen brothers had followed him into the woods, not to haunt, but to ask why. Once, he might have meditated to calm the storm within. But now, the silence was the storm. Eventually, exhaustion dragged him under. And there, in dream, came the fire. The fortress again, burning. Bodies stacked like fallen dolls. He stood amidst them, alone, untouched by flame but seared by sorrow. Then, a voice soft, warm. His mother. True strength, she said, standing among the smoke. Isn't in the sword, Haruto. It's in the silence, after the sword. He reached for her, but she dissolved like mist. The fire swallowed all. He awoke gasping. And the sword was gone. Instinct screamed. He rolled, heart pounding, just as a shape lunged from the dark. Steel hissed past his ear. Haruto grabbed the attacker's wrist, twisted, felt the force behind it, practiced deadly. Not a bandit. They clashed, twice, 3 times, quick, brutal blows. The stranger was lean, fast, with a flowing gray cloak and eyes hidden beneath a dark hood. Not a word. Not a sound. Only breath and blade. Haruto parried, ducked, and the edge of a blade nicked his shoulder. A thin cut, burning oddly. Before he could retaliate, the stranger leapt back and vanished into the trees like smoke. Silence returned. Haruto staggered to his feet, clutching his arm. Blood trickled slowly, but the wound was strange. Cold, as if pricked by ice. He turned in slow circles, scanning the forest. Nothing. And then he saw it, caught on a low branch, torn fabric. He stepped closer and stopped. His stomach dropped. On the cloth, faint, but clear, a symbol. A bird's wing, broken in half. His mind raced. That symbol. That feather. The attack on Shiraishi. This was no coincidence. Then something else caught his eye, embedded in a tree trunk nearby. A glint of metal. He stepped forward, carefully pulled it free, a silver arrowhead. Delicate, razor-thin, with a faint sheen. He sniffed. Poison. But it hadn't been fired at him. Someone else had been the target. There's another, here. Haruto backed away slowly. The forest held more than just memories. Someone else moved through it, hunted. Or hunting. He wrapped the wound, glanced once more at the broken wing sigil, then turned toward the path. The sky above was turning faintly pale. Dawn. And with it, a glimmer of stone between the trees. A shrine. He approached slowly. The roof was half collapsed, blackened by old fire. Moss grew over the steps. But near the entrance, something flickered. A lantern. Still warm. And beside it, in the shadow, a man sat sharpening a blade. Calm. Focused. Cloaked in gray. His posture relaxed, but coiled like a waiting serpent. His eyes lifted as Haruto approached. Dark. Measuring. No words. Only the sound of metal against stone. The temple stood as a skeleton of reverence. Roof half collapsed, stones split by time, sakura trees piercing the cracked foundation as if reclaiming the sacred for the wild. Moss spilled over steps that once welcomed pilgrims. Now they welcomed only ghosts. Haruto stood at the edge of the clearing, the wind tugging at his tattered robes. Rain had begun to fall, not heavy, but insistent, soaking into stone, turning the air cold and clean. His wound burned beneath the wrappings, but his attention was fixed on the man beneath the eaves. The stranger sat cross-legged beside a smoldering fire, sharpening a blade with rhythmic precision. Each pull of the whetstone sang softly, a whisper of readiness. His gray kimono was plain but immaculate, tied with care. His hair was drawn into a short knot, revealing a face shadowed by the temple's slanting roof. He hadn't moved since Haruto arrived. The silence between them lengthened. Not awkward, tense. Two swordsmen, two storms circling, waiting to see if they would clash or pass. I need water, Haruto said, voice rough from the forest chill. The man didn't reply. Instead, he reached beside him, picked up a flask, and tossed it in a perfect arc. Haruto caught it without thanks and drank deeply. The water was cold and clean. He wiped his mouth with the back of his hand, his eyes never leaving the stranger. You've been watching me. Still, no answer. You followed me? A pause, then the whetstone stopped. The man stood slowly, slipping the now sharpened blade back into its sheath. No, he said at last, voice low but clear. You followed death. I simply waited. Haruto's muscles tensed. Who are you? Someone who doesn't give names to strangers. Then perhaps we stop being strangers. The man nodded, slightly. There are quicker ways. And in the next breath he drew. It wasn't an attack. It was a conversation, in steel. Haruto responded without hesitation, sword leaping to his hand as if summoned by instinct. They met not with fury, but with precision. One step. One strike. A block. A retreat. A pause. They circled each other in the rain, movements sharp and beautiful, like dancers trained in silence. Blades sang. Sparks flared from stone. Neither sought death, only understanding. Every clash tested measure, every feint asked a question. Who are you? What do you believe? Why do you carry pain in your stance? Haruto's strength waned before his resolve did. His knee bent, not from defeat, but exhaustion. Breath ragged, he lowered his blade, not in surrender, but in respect. The stranger stepped back, sheathed his sword in one fluid motion, then offered his hand. You're from Shiraishi, he said. Haruto looked up, eyes narrowing. How do you know that? I've seen the way that place burns. Haruto took the hand, pulled himself up. You've been to the bay? The man nodded. I was tracking someone. Missed them by a day. But I found a trail. And a broken wing. At that, Haruto's fingers brushed the cloth hidden within his own sleeve. He pulled out a fragment of a map, burned at the edges, marked with strange runes. I found this, he said. Before the forest. The man's eyes flickered. He reached into his own sleeve and revealed another piece. Torn, aged, but when placed beside Haruto's fragment, they matched. Symbols aligned. A path emerged. You're not just a traveler, Haruto said carefully. No. And neither are you. Rain tapped against the tiles above them. Smoke rose from wet wood, the scent bitter. Inside the temple, dust and decay ruled, until a glint caught Haruto's eye. He stepped toward the wall. One of the stones near the altar looked newer. He pressed it, and it gave way slightly. A hollow behind it. Reaching in, he pulled free a rolled scroll, bound with a faded red string. Unfurling it, both men leaned close. The ink was smeared by time, but the message remained. Beware the iron bird from the north. Blood will fall first into water. The script, ancient, but unmistakably Japanese. It was planned, Haruto murmured. Long before the sails came. The stranger's face darkened. I was inside their camps once. Under another name. I searched for one man. A traitor. He betrayed my clan. Perhaps yours too. Haruto nodded slowly. Then we have the same path. The man looked at him. Renji, he said finally. That is my name. Haruto bowed his head. Haruto. They sat again beneath the temple's eaves, sharing bitter tea from a cracked pot. The fire hissed in the drizzle. Neither spoke further of trust. They knew better. But something had shifted. As the sky paled toward morning, they stood. You're heading north? Renji asked. To Tenryu. Then we walked the same road. They left the temple behind as mist curled through the branches. On the horizon, red roofs. A village. And above it, black smoke. On the 5th day of their journey, as dusk curled low over the hills, Haruto and Renji descended into a quiet village nestled between a bamboo grove and a shallow river. The roofs were red-tiled and damp with recent rain. Chickens wandered the stone paths, but no children laughed, no dogs barked. Smoke drifted from chimneys, but it smelled more of damp straw than comfort. Kaiosei was its name. A place that looked alive, but felt hollow. As they walked into the square, people turned away. Eyes lowered. Faces drawn. Even greetings, when offered, were faint, forced. The silence of the forest had followed them here. They fear something, Renji murmured. But not us. Haruto nodded. Something already among them. A hunched elder approached. The village headman. His robes were clean, but his hands trembled. You come with swords, he said. You should know, the grove is cursed. Haruto raised an eyebrow. Cursed how? Children have vanished. 3 nights now. No footprints. No cries. Just empty beds. Renji shifted. We don't have time for superstition. But Haruto's eyes moved past the headman, to a woman kneeling at a shrine. Her face was blank, but her hands clutched a sandal, far too small. Her fingers trembled. I've seen that grief, Haruto said quietly. We help. Renji's jaw tensed. And if more vanish while we linger? Haruto looked him in the eye. If we reach Tenryu, but leave this behind, what's left of our honor? They set up camp near the edge of the grove. The bamboo whispered with the wind, tall and dense, their trunks pale in the moonlight. The villagers stayed indoors. Doors barred. Lanterns dimmed. Fear had taught them to stay silent. At midnight the fog rolled in thick and low. The kind that silences steps and confuses memory. Haruto crouched in the brush, blade drawn, heart steady. A soft rustle. Then shadows. Figures, cloaked in black, slipped through the bamboo like smoke. They moved in pairs. One carried a sack. It squirmed. Haruto didn't wait. He lunged from the brush, blade flashing. One of the strangers turned too late. Haruto slashed the sack open, and a small child tumbled out, dazed but breathing. The attacker hissed and vanished into the grove. Elsewhere, steel rang. Renji had given chase, leaping from stalk to stalk with terrifying grace. Two blades danced in the mist, until one vanished. Haruto, kneeling beside the child, looked up. One figure remained caught in the clearing's edge. He was young, barely 14. Eyes wide, blade clutched awkwardly. "Who sent you?" Haruto asked. No reply. Only silence. The boy's hands trembled. His eyes darted, not with malice, but confusion. "You're not like them," Haruto said softly. "You still feel fear." Still no words. But before turning to flee, the boy stepped forward, reached into his tunic, and pressed something into Haruto's hand. Then he vanished. Haruto looked down. A wooden charm. Hand-carved. A broken wing. The same symbol. Rain began to fall. The child beside him clutched his sleeve. That morning, the villagers gathered, half in awe, half in dread. The child was safe. But suspicion had fallen on another. A monk. Blind. Quiet. Living beside the temple. They surrounded his hut, stones in hand. "He chants strange prayers," someone said. "He never mourned the children," another whispered. Renji stepped forward, hand on hilt. "That proves nothing." But it was Haruto who pushed through the crowd, holding up the charm. He knew. He knew what they were after. Inside the monk's hut they found maps, marked not with villages, but bloodlines. An old code, passed down through clans. And a single note, in elegant brushwork. "They don't want the many. Only the marked." The monk's sightless eyes faced them. "I heard the wind speak their names," he said calmly. "They search not for children, but heirs." It took time, but the villagers dispersed. That evening, by firelight, the child Haruto had saved tugged on his sleeve. She tied something around his wrist, a thin white ribbon. "For luck," she said. "You're not like the others." He didn't take it off. At dawn, the two warriors prepared to leave. As they passed the edge of the square, an old man stepped from the shadows and faced Renji. "You seek truth," he rasped. "Then go to Zuho Temple. The one you lost waits there." Renji's face paled. His knuckles whitened. He said nothing. But his eyes burned. They walked on. Toward the mountains. And behind them, the mist swallowed Kaiosei whole. The path to Zuho Temple wound like a scar along the mountainside, narrow, steep, and slick with rain. Moss covered every stone, and trees leaned in from all sides, whispering with the breath of the storm. Thunder rolled in the distance like the growl of a slumbering beast. Lightning cracked above, illuminating the twisted silhouettes of the pines. Haruto pulled his cloak tighter. Beside him, Renji walked in silence, jaw clenched, eyes sharp. Something inside him had shifted since Kaiosei, as if the name, Zuho, stirred old ghosts. By the time they reached the plateau, darkness had fallen completely. Torches flickered on long poles around the temple's perimeter. A crimson banner snapped in the wind, soaked with rain, marked with unfamiliar script. The temple no longer resembled a place of prayer. It was a fortress draped in sacred lies. Figures in white robes moved silently among the buildings. Their faces were hidden by veils. In the courtyards, black incense drifted from clay bowls. The scent was sharp, not calming, but narcotic, hypnotic. The guards at the gate didn't question their presence. Pilgrims were common. But as they passed beneath the archway carved with sea serpent motifs, Haruto felt it, a cold, crawling sensation beneath his skin. Inside, the temple pulsed with a strange rhythm. Candles lined the walls, but their flames wavered unnaturally. Icons of forgotten gods loomed above, their eyes scratched out, their mouths replaced with spirals. Faint chanting echoed from unseen corridors, like whispers in a drowning man's ears. "This is no longer a shrine," Haruto whispered. Renji didn't answer. His eyes had locked onto something, a wall covered in paper. Not prayers, but diagrams. Maps. Photographs. Targets. And among them, Tenria Castle. With dates. Dates that hadn't happened yet. They know the future, Haruto murmured. No, Renji said quietly. They make it. Before they could examine further, a bell tolled, deep and resonant. And from a side corridor, a figure emerged. Tall. Graceful. Calm. Dressed in red and white, his face uncovered. Haruto felt Renji freeze. Narrated, Renji breathed. The man smiled, warm, serene. So you still wear the face of the student. You died, Renji growled. I saw your blood on the sand. I was reborn, Narrated replied. And in rebirth I saw the world clearly. He gestured for them to follow. Strangely, they did. He led them through halls lined with twisted murals, depictions of storms swallowing cities, men kneeling before black oceans, and a towering shape beneath the waves, crowned in silence. They call him the deep listener, Haruto said. The sea god who hears what the sky ignores. This is madness, Haruto muttered. No, Haruto said, voice soft. This is evolution. The shogunate rots. Honor is dead. The world needs order, not from swords, but from silence. The kind only the abyss can give. Renji's blade flashed. The duel ignited with no more words. Their swords met in arcs of silver and flame. Haruto stepped back as the storm outside crashed against the walls. Sparks flew. Incense bowls shattered. Narrated moved with terrifying elegance, not faster than Renji, but more fluid, more unnatural. You were my teacher, Renji shouted. And you were my mistake, Haruto said calmly, striking again. The fight pushed them into the main hall, and as lightning struck the roof, fire leapt from overturned lanterns. The old wood crackled, catching with hungry speed. Smoke coiled around the pillars, and a gust sent burning pages spiraling through the air like fireflies from hell. Narato's robes caught flame, but he didn't stop. Only when Renji's blade sliced through his sash did he falter. His chest was bare beneath, and there, across his ribs, was a scar, identical to Renji's own. A mark from a battle long ago. I didn't die that day, Haruto said. I opened my eyes. The Empire is dead. All that remains is what comes next. He leapt back into the smoke. A burning beam crashed between them. The roof gave way. Haruto vanished in flame and shadow. But his voice echoed through the chaos. Your warning means nothing. They are already inside. The fire roared. Haruto grabbed Renji's arm, dragging him through the dark. Scrolls turned to ash. Bells fell from above like dead stars. Lamps died one by one behind them, swallowed by smoke. They burst into the night, gasping, the storm washing the ash from their faces. Renji collapsed to his knees. For the first time, he screamed, raw, broken, and hurled his sword at the stone. The hilt cracked. His hands bled. We're too late, he whispered. It's all already begun. But Haruto reached into the debris-stained cloak and pulled something free, a scroll sealed in red wax. The mark on it, the crest of Tenria Castle. Haruto met Renji's eyes. The traitor isn't just a monk in the mountains. Renji wiped the rain from his face. Then we go back to the beginning. They turned from the burning temple, its crimson banners curling into smoke behind them. And as they descended the path, thunder rumbling over their shoulders, light met them. Below, nestled between two cliffs, was a mountain bazaar. Lanterns swayed above rows of stalls. Vendors shouted. Children ran with pinwheels. Laughter rang like bells. The scent of grilled fish, plum wine, and ginger filled the air. The contrast struck like a blade. Life. Blissfully unaware. But waiting. The town of Kamino shimmered like a dream carved from incense smoke and laughter. Lanterns danced on silk strings above cobbled paths, bright as fireflies. The smell of grilled eel, sweet rice dumplings, and tangy plum wine drifted through the air. Children with red cheeks ran with paper kites. Girls in cotton yukata handed out cups of warm sake to passing travelers. It was the 6th day of the journey, and Haruto could barely walk. Burned, bruised, and bone-weary after the fire at Suho Temple, he moved through the colorful crowd as if through a mirage. Behind him, Renji followed in silence, eyes never still. "This place is too perfect," he muttered. "Nothing this clean ever hides the truth." But Haruto said nothing. His senses were dulled by warmth, color, and the smell of life. It had been so long since they'd seen joy that he almost forgot to mistrust it. Then he heard a voice he hadn't heard in years. "Well, well, well." The storm himself, walking through the sunlight. "I never thought I'd see you again." Haruto turned, and there he was. Masuda. Same crooked grin. Same mischievous gleam in his eyes. Dressed finer than before, in merchant's robes lined with gold thread, a fan in one hand and a cup of tea in the other. "Masuda?" Haruto blinked. "You're alive?" "I could say the same." Masuda pulled him into a rough embrace. "You've got soot in your hair and death in your eyes. Come. I'll buy you tea, and a little truth." They sat in a corner tea house, cushions soft and steam curling in the air. Masuda talked fast, like always. He spoke of shifting alliances, border lords selling steel to both sides, and how Tenrya Castle, beautiful, proud, doomed, was already crumbling from within. "But," he said, tapping a lacquered box, "I have something that'll save you 2 days of hiking. A pass. Real, marked, sealed. Straight through the northern pass. Military route." He slid the seal across the table. "In return, a small favor. Deliver this." A scroll, wrapped in dark cloth. "To a friend of mine in the next province." Renji leaned forward slowly. "You talk too much, and laugh too easily." Masuda shrugged. "I always did. In war, it's the quiet ones you should fear." Then, almost absently, he reached into his sleeve and placed something on the table. A dark oval stone, set in silver. Smoky, like obsidian, but alive somehow. "A gift I picked up far from here," he said. "They call it a mirror of smoke. It doesn't show your face, only what's inside." Haruto hesitated, then touched it. The world swayed. He saw Tenrya Castle burning. The great gate in flames. A figure in the shadows, tall, robed in noble garments, speaking to an enemy commander. The voice was muffled, but the posture was familiar. Someone from inside. He dropped the stone. Breath shallow. Masuda caught it midair. "Careful. Memory bites harder than steel." But before Haruto could speak, he realized something. Renji was gone. He stood, heart pounding, and rushed outside. The town had changed. The lanterns still burned, but the laughter was gone. Stalls stood empty. The girls with sake? Vanished. The kites hung motionless in the air. Doors shut. Eyes averted. And then, a blow from behind. He awoke to cold stone. His shirt was gone, wounds exposed, wrists bound. Chains rattled. Across from him, Renji sat in silence. Blood at the corner of his mouth, eyes alert. "So much for tea and a shortcut," Renji muttered. The door creaked. Masuda entered. Same smile. "Ah, old friends. Not how I wanted our reunion to go, but fate rarely asks permission." Haruto growled. "You betrayed us." Masuda sighed. "No, Haruto. I survived. We all do what we must. You chose fire. I chose shadow." He knelt, laying something between them, a scroll and a map. "But I'm not without sentiment. You saved me once, remember? First skirmish at Oari. I was a bleeding idiot with more courage than sense. You dragged me out when everyone else ran." Haruto didn't reply. Masuda stood. "So I repay the debt. I need you alive. Others want you dead." He paused at the door. "We all sell out. Some for silver. Some for silence. I just happen to be better at it." The door shut. Silence returned. Then laughter. Dry. Bitter. Renji's voice. Well, that was the drop. Haruto clenched his fists. No, he said. It's a hinge. Not the end. Water dripped from above. Time slowed. They sat in shadows, chained but breathing. And then, a sound. A low scraping, metal against stone. From the corner, a figure emerged. Small. Hooded. A whisper. If you want to leave, don't speak. Don't ask. Just follow. Stone. Damp, cold, oppressive. The walls pressed in on all sides, jagged and sweat slicked from years of neglect. Faint echoes crawled through the tunnels, distant scraping, water dripping from above, the breath of something ancient and unseen. Haruto sat with his back against a rusted support beam, wrists bound, shirt still missing from the search. His wounds throbbed with each heartbeat. Across from him, Renji leaned against the opposite wall, his face partially obscured by shadow, but his posture taut. Even in chains, he looked ready to strike. They had been thrown into the depths beneath Kamino, an old smuggler's tunnel system beneath Mount Sairyu, once used by miners, now a rat's warren for contraband and secrets. The air was thick, tinged with metal and mildew. Breathing felt like swallowing damp earth. Time passed slowly. It stretched like thread pulled too tight. The flickering lantern cast misshapen shadows along the tunnel walls, making the rocks seem alive, watching, waiting. Their guards, 3 hired thugs in mismatched armor, were growing bored. One dozed. Another scratched his arm endlessly, eyes dull from sake. But the third kept watching. Always watching. The sharpest of them, or the most afraid. Renji whispered. They're not professionals. If we had our swords... Haruto cut him off with a look. They had neither strength nor time. All they had was silence. And silence was dangerous in a place that listened. Then, a sound. Barely a breath. Something moved. Not the guards. Not a rat. A presence. Silent. Intentional. The flame of the lantern trembled, and died. A blur of movement. A soft snap. A muffled gasp. One guard disappeared into the shadows. Another crumpled with a quiet groan. The last barely had time to draw his blade before something slender and sharp jabbed his neck. When the light returned, all 3 were on the floor. Breathing barely. But not dead. Between the 2 warriors stood a girl no older than 19. Black clothes close to the skin. A silver ribbon around her neck. Her eyes, sharp and unreadable, scanned them once, then sliced the ropes on Haruto's wrists with a flick of her blade. I don't know who you are, she whispered, but your enemies are mine. Move. Quietly. She moved ahead before they could speak. They followed, stumbling behind her into the maze of corridors. Haruto's limbs ached. Blood crusted beneath the wrappings on his side. Renji limped slightly, favoring his right leg. And yet, the girl glided ahead like a wisp of smoke. Who are you? Haruto asked. Akane, she replied. Of the Tsukigim. Renji stiffened. I thought your clan was wiped out. They tried, she said flatly. But we don't vanish. We hide. The tunnels narrowed, then widened. Cracks veined the walls like scars. From time to time, Akane paused, placing her palm against stone, fingers spread, listening, or feeling, for something. She's reading the vibration of the rock, Haruto whispered. Like a bat, Renji added, impressed despite himself. Akane stopped before a collapsed archway. She traced a symbol into the dust, a spiral broken by a single slash, and pressed inward. The wall gave way with a sigh. Inside was a hidden chamber. Stale air. Silence. And in the center, an old wooden chest, scorched and sealed with wire. Renji broke the lock. Inside, a scroll. A map. Haruto unrolled it slowly. His breath caught. It marked a path through the northern cliffs. Twisting. Dangerous. But fast. On the back, a seal. The same sigil they'd seen in Zoho Temple. They'd been using this, Renji said. All this time. It leads straight to Tenryu, Haruto murmured. But curse, Akane added. An entire unit disappeared in there. No remains. No tracks. Haruto turned to her, but she was gone. Not a sound. Not a trace. Renji hissed. She vanished. Just like that? No. Haruto pointed to the stone wall nearby. Etched in fine, almost invisible lines, a message. They have my brother. I go ahead. Follow. Her mark. A needlepoint truth left in stone. They stood in silence for a moment, surrounded by the heartbeat of dripping water and distant echoes. She's more than she seems, Haruto said. Too fast, Renji muttered. But not untrue. They climbed through the exit tunnel, narrow and caved in. Haruto nearly slipped, crushed beneath a falling beam, but Renji caught him, and together they clawed upward. As they neared the exit, Haruto paused. His hand brushed the carved edge of the tunnel, the stone damp and warm. There's something watching, he murmured. I know, Renji replied. But it hasn't struck yet. When they emerged, the sunlight hit them like fire. But the world above was no safer. Before them stretched a wide, fog-choked valley. Crooked trees. Toppled statues. Earth split by ancient tremors. At its edge, a standing stone. Carved into it, old kanji. He who steps here leaves behind not only fear, but himself. Renji stared forward. Slowly, he pulled off his face cloth. If this path leads to truth, he said, then I go first. Haruto looked once more at the ruined land, then stepped after him. The cursed valley welcomed them without a sound. They stepped into the valley, and the world forgot them. At first, it was only mist, soft, curling around their legs like tired breath. But with every step deeper into the hollow known as Yamanoke, the Valley of the Forgotten, the fog thickened until it swallowed the ground, the sky, the air. The light faded to silver. Sound dulled. Time slowed. Then it stopped. Haruto and Renji said nothing. Their steps grew smaller, quieter. Even their thoughts seemed muffled. Somewhere far away, a bell rang. Or was it a memory? Renji walked ahead, his hand hovering near the hilt of his sword. But there was no threat in sight, only shapes, shifting in the fog like half-formed memories. Then voices. Familiar. Renji. He turned. They stood there. All of them. His mother. His brother. His little sister with the red ribbon in her hair. Smiling. You came back, she said, stepping forward. You remembered. Renji's heart clenched. His legs moved on their own. But then the smiles changed. Became colder. Sadder. You left us, his brother whispered. You chose war over family. I tried to protect. No, said his mother, voice now sharp as frost. You wanted to be remembered. And now you are, by the dead. Their eyes turned black. Renji stumbled back. Behind him, the fog shifted again, and the ground vanished. A cliff. Below, endless shadow. And from it, Narato's voice. You followed a lie, my student. Come home to silence. Renji's foot slipped. He tottered forward. But a hand grabbed his collar, yanked him back. Haruto. Breathing hard, shaking, his eyes wide. Don't listen to it, he said. None of it is real. But Haruto's hands trembled too. Because moments earlier, he'd seen Shiraishi burn, again. And again. He'd seen himself fighting in the courtyard, his comrades dying one by one. Then he saw himself, blade bloodied, standing over their bodies. Then another version, where he never fought at all. Where he ran. Where they died without him. The fog laughed. It took Renji's face. Turned it cruel. Sneering. You were never meant to survive. And Haruto had raised his sword. Until he saw it. The white ribbon. Tied around Renji's wrist. A child's gift. Pure. Real. It pierced the illusion like morning light. And he stopped. The blade fell from his hand. Together they breathed, in, out, and the fog around them stirred, faltered. But then came footsteps. Real ones. A man stepped into view, tall, armored, confident. K. The warrior who had helped them escape Kamino. His expression now was different. Cold. Efficient. Behind him, shadows. Armed, alert. Silent. You were supposed to stay in the fog, Kay said. It softens the will. Makes capture easier. Renji's face hardened. You betrayed us. No, Kay said. I guided you here. Just not for your benefit. Then Haruto saw it, the broken wing sigil at Kay's belt. The same as the boy in the grove. The attacker in the shrine. The traitor in the smoke. It's all connected, Haruto whispered. Kay stepped forward. Your mission means nothing. Tenrya has already been sold. Bought and paid for by those who understand the tides. Haruto drew his blade. So we're just drifting now, he said. Pulled by shadows? Kay's smile vanished. Steel clashed. The fog exploded into motion as blades met in white silence. Haruto fought by sound, instinct. Every footfall echoed strangely. Renji vanished, reappeared, cutting through enemy shapes like wine through reeds. Kay moved like a ghost, his form blurred by the mist. He fought with calm precision, as if he'd already won. But he hadn't counted on the ribbon. Haruto saw it again, flickering on Renji's wrist like a flame. He followed it, trusted it, and struck. His blade caught Kay across the chest. The traitor stumbled, blood mixing with the mist. He didn't scream. He smiled bitterly. You think this matters? He hissed. The castle is already hollow. The poison's at the root. Then he vanished into the fog. The others scattered. And the valley grew still. The fog didn't clear completely, but it thinned. Light pierced it like reluctant hope. The bell sounds faded. Haruto knelt, breathing hard. His body shook not from pain, but from what he'd seen. What he'd nearly done. Renji sat beside him. The dead talk, he said. But we don't have to listen. Haruto looked at him, and then at the ribbon. Not anymore, he said. They rose. Ahead, through the last veil of mist, a great stone bridge stretched across a ravine. On the far side, the outer walls of Tenryu. Battered. Scarred. And waiting. Figures stood at the bridge's end. Soldiers. Survivors. Their commander stepped forward, hand on blade. No one crosses, he called. Not with false warnings. Renji's hand found his sword. We're almost there, he said softly. And now, it ends in steel. The stone bridge arched like a blade over the roaring river below, a final passage to the walls of Tenryu. Mist clung to the cliffs, and the first pale rays of dawn pierced the clouds above, washing the sky in silver and gold. Haruto and Renji stood at the foot of the bridge, flanked by the remnants of their journey, silent, bruised, changed. At the center of the span, a black line of armored figures stood unmoving. Their cloaks rippled in the wind. Their blades gleamed in the morning light. They were survivors, but not simply men guarding a crossing. They were soldiers without a home. Men forged by loss and kept alive by memory. Their leader stepped forward. Kenjiro. Tall, built like iron, his face weathered and scarred with years of loyalty. His armor was blackened from flame and time, but the discipline in his eyes had not dimmed. When he spoke, it was like stone grinding against stone. No further, he said. The castle beyond is not what it was. Gold commands it now. Not steel. We guard this bridge not for the shogun, not for any lord, but for what little honor still lives in the cracks of this country. Haruto stepped forward, wind brushing against his face, carrying the scent of smoke from beyond the cliffs. His voice was calm, but firm, the voice of someone who had walked through fire and shadow. We bring warning. Evidence of betrayal. The enemy has taken roads no one should remember. Kenjiro's eyes narrowed. And your words are just wind until proven otherwise. You say you come with truth? Then show it with your sword. Renji made no move to stop him. His voice was low, almost a whisper behind Haruto. "This is your moment. Let your truth speak through motion. Through resolve." Haruto looked at his friend, and nodded once. Then stepped forward alone. The wind picked up. The sky brightened, and the world seemed to hush. Every breath, every footfall echoed with purpose. The others stood back. Haruto and Kenjiro met at the bridge's center, stone beneath their feet, water far below, and history pressing down from all sides. No crowd, no judge. Just two men, each a blade, each forged by grief. Steel clashed. Kenjiro moved like a mountain, solid, precise. Every strike was deliberate, crushing. He fought not to win, but to test, to weigh the soul of the man before him. Haruto answered with speed and clarity, parrying, deflecting, his strikes exact, like memory made flesh. His style had changed, refined by pain, sharpened by purpose. Each blow echoed not only across stone, but through memory. To Haruto, this was not just a fight. It was every fight. It was the walls of Shiraishi falling. It was the flame on his commander's lips. It was the child's ribbon brushing his wrist. And Kenjiro felt it, too. The man before him was not a pawn. He was a message, one sent by the dead to the living. Both men bled. Haruto's arm ached from a well-placed cut. Kenjiro's shoulder split from a reverse stroke. Their breath came hard. Their stances shifted, sweat falling with blood onto the stone. Then, an opening. Kenjiro's foot slipped ever so slightly, and Haruto's blade came to rest at his throat. He did not strike. Instead, he stepped back, and placed his sword at Kenjiro's feet. "I didn't come to win," he said. "I came to warn. If you kill me, Tenryu falls without ever hearing what must be said. The choice is yours." The bridge went silent. Kenjiro stared down at the blade. His hands trembled slightly, not from pain, but from something deeper. A memory. A wound not yet closed. He knelt, and lifted the sword with reverence. "Had one of my comrades spoken with your voice," he said hoarsely, "perhaps we would not have broken." He turned to his men. "Let them pass." A collective breath moved through the warriors like wind through reeds. Kenjiro reached into his sash and removed a small, wooden box. Time-worn. Locked. He opened it, revealing a torn piece of parchment, a map fragment, faded, but marked with the same seal as the one found at Zeho Temple. "This was all I kept from my commander. I never knew what it meant. Now I do." Haruto took it carefully, hands steady. "It matches the others," he murmured. "They know all the roads. Even those we've forgotten." Renji stepped forward. His eyes met Kenjiro's, and a nod passed between them. Two warriors who had chosen not to kill, but to believe. The bridge opened. As they crossed it, the castle of Tenryu emerged from the mist. Its towers stood tall, but smoke rose behind them. Black smoke, not of warning, but of siege. Renji drew in a breath through clenched teeth. "We made it," he said. "But we're not the only ones who knew this path." Haruto, still holding the map fragment, looked toward the rising banners of Tenryu. "Then let's be the first to defend it before it's too late." Behind them, Kenjiro and his warriors followed, the lost, returned to the fire. Ahead, Tenryu waited. And with it, the final reckoning. The castle of Tenryu loomed like a sleeping dragon above the cliffs, its banners catching the early light, its stone walls weathered by time, but not by betrayal. Not yet. Haruto and Renji stood at its massive gates, flanked by Kenjiro's warriors and the last breath of their long, harrowing journey. But there was no triumph in their arrival. Only urgency. Inside, the courtyards churned with movement. Soldiers ran with bundles of arrows and crates of oil. Smiths hammered spikes into ballista frames. Atop the towers, signal fires burned high, their smoke trailing like black claws into the sky. From the ramparts, Haruto could already see them. Sails. Dozens of them. Black against the horizon, too many to count, and in their midst, larger than the rest, a hulking shadow with armored sides. Renji stiffened beside him. That ship, he said. It's him. Naruto. They moved quickly through the main gate, past confused soldiers and shouting officers. In the War Council chamber, a tall hall of wooden banners, commanders had gathered in a loose circle. Maps lay unrolled across a central table, weighed down by stones and inkpots. The tension was palpable. Arguments already sparked in low voices. It's a feint. No, look at the signals. We don't even know if they'll attack tonight. Then Haruto spoke. Clear. Sharp. Shiraishi is gone. The room stilled. I saw it fall, he continued. I crawled from its ashes. I carry the map of their hidden roads, proof they're not improvising. They're executing a plan. One of the commanders stepped forward, a tall man with gold stitching on his cloak and suspicion in his eyes. You were there, he said slowly. You survived. You carry their map. His gaze narrowed. Or did you bring it for them? Murmurs erupted. Then Renji stepped into the center. I was a spy, he said, voice cold and steady. I walked through their camps. I drank with their commanders. I read their orders. His hand landed on the table. I also watched them torture children, burn shrines, and tear families apart in the name of order. I walked away from that. And I came here, because this is the last place still standing. Silence again. Haruto unrolled the map. This symbol, he said, pointing. We saw it at Zoho. On a trader in Kamino. And here. He reached into his cloak and revealed the fragment Kenjiro had given him. The seal matched. Someone inside has been feeding them everything. The tension thickened. Until Haruto's eyes drifted to a man sitting quietly at the edge of the room. Older. Thin. Ink-stained fingers. Unremarkable, except for the slight tremble as he adjusted his sleeves. Haruto stepped forward slowly. Then stopped. The memory returned, not from this room, but from a stone. A black stone. The mirror of smoke. He'd seen a figure. In robes like these. With shoulders like these. Your name? Haruto asked. The man swallowed. Dosen. I'm the chief scribe. Haruto pulled the map closer. Then you recognize this handwriting. Dosen hesitated, then bolted for the door. But she was already there. A blur. A breath. Akane. She stepped from the shadows and struck. One silent movement. The man collapsed, unconscious. I didn't reach my brother in time, she whispered, but I can still help save the city. The council held fast. Plans shifted. Trust flickered. But the momentum changed. Banners were repositioned. Hidden passages sealed. Old boulders for the cliffside trebuchets were unearthed. Ancient bales of black powder were rolled into place. A new map was drawn, with Haruto's knowledge, Renji's insight, and Akane's instincts. And then, Masuda arrived. Torn robe. Broken fan. I still know where their coin goes, he said. And for once, I'm choosing the side that can't pay me. He dropped a scroll on the table. Their strike plan. And the ship they're hiding under the waves. Renji frowned. Why? Masuda looked tired. Even a merchant has a line. The day waned. Torches were lit along the walls. Oil poured into the trenches. Crossbows were cranked and locked. Haruto stood atop the western wall, looking out at the sea. The ships had grown closer. The black barge at the center moved slowly, patiently, like it had all the time in the world. Renji joined him, silent. Behind them, the castle stirred. I was afraid, Haruto said softly, that everything we did was just motion. That none of it would matter. Renji exhaled. It does now. Haruto touched the white ribbon tied to his wrist. Still clean. Still whole. Then if I fall, he whispered, it will be standing. Below, the drums began. Dull. Measured. Endless. The siege had begun. And Tenryu, the last light, was ready to burn before it bowed. Night fell like a warning. The stars were hidden behind smoke. Torches flickered along the ramparts of Tenri Castle, their flames swallowed by the dark. Below, the valley churned with movement, shadows on the march, an army rising from the sea. Drums pounded from the enemy lines, steady as a heartbeat. The siege had begun. Haruto stood atop the main tower, his sword drawn but lowered. The white ribbon still clung to his wrist, fluttering like memory in the wind. Beside him stood Renji, silent and focused. Akane crouched near the far edge, adjusting her stolen armor. Masuda leaned on the parapet, a half-burned map in his hand and a grin that didn't quite reach his tired eyes. And Kinjiro, the old warrior, paced the wall below, directing archers with calm authority. These were not soldiers of a perfect army. They were the last light of a storm-swept land. They had chosen to stand. The first volley came just before midnight. Arrows, tipped in flame, screamed across the sky. Some struck the battlements. Others fell short. Oil hissed where it met stone. Haruto raised his sword. Steady! The second wave followed, siege ladders, battering rams, iron hooks. The enemy poured forward, believing the castle broken, hollowed from within. But they found traps. Collapsing stairs. Hidden pikes ballistae buried in towers, now rising like avenging beasts. A shout from the eastern wall. Akane had vanished into the mist, dressed in enemy armor. She slipped through the ranks like smoke, climbing past guards, past scouts, into the heart of the command drums. With a flash of steel, the largest drum, the one calling orders, fell silent. Chaos followed. Renji, from the wall, saw her signal. A single flare of red light from a stolen torch. Then she was gone again, melting into the fog of war. Meanwhile, Masuda led a small band through a collapsed tunnel at the rear. They carried fire, oil, and a stolen map of the enemy's supply wagons. When the barrels ignited, when the sky flashed orange behind enemy lines, Haruto knew Masuda had done it. And he knew Masuda hadn't returned. The castle trembled. At the height of the chaos, the black barge arrived. Silent, massive, unstoppable. It slid through the river like a ghost. And from it stepped Murato. Clad in robes of iron gray, his face calm, untouched by the blood around him. His sword, sheathed at his side, looked like it had never known war. His voice rang out, calm and terrible. You still choose struggle? We offer order. Lay down your arms, and we will give you peace. Renji descended the tower without a word. The gates opened, just enough. And Renji walked alone onto the blood-soaked field. Murato met him. No armor. No banners. Just two men, once master and student, now ideals in flesh. Their duel was quiet. No cheers. No cries. Only the ring of steel and the breath of memory. It was not fast. It was not brutal. It was inevitable. They moved like mirrors. Like echoes. And in the final moment, Renji disarmed his teacher. The sword spun from Murato's hand and struck the earth point first. Renji lowered his blade. You taught me control, he said. But never choice. And that is the root of all strength. Murato, on his knees, looked at the broken blade in the dirt. Then, slowly, raised his hand. A signal. Retreat. The black barge turned. And with it, the tide. Dawn came late. The sky cracked open in pink and gold. On the walls of Tenryu, soldiers stood still, wounded, smoke-streaked, but breathing. Flags, torn and blackened, still hung. Haruto walked the ramparts in silence. He paused before a broken stone. Beneath it, Masuda's sash, tied around a scorched beam. He chose, Renji said, stepping beside him. In the end, that's all any of us have. Akane emerged from the shadows. I'll go, she said. There may be others out there. Lost once. I'll find them. Haruto nodded. He looked to Renji. We lived. But this was your last war, Renji replied. You don't belong to the blade anymore. Haruto smiled. I never did. He turned, and walked toward the center tower. At its base, he knelt before the banner of Tenryu, unsheathed his sword one final time, and laid it across the stones. Then stood. No longer a warrior. Just a man, walking forward. The white ribbon on his wrist danced in the morning light. He walked for 7 days. But the journey was never about miles. It was the path from duty to choice. From blade to silence. This was the path of a samurai. Now begins the path of a man.